Stage 3 and 7 of this year's Rally Finland. It is the Lankamaa stage, and David, this is one of the most famous stages in Rally Finland for very good reasons.
It's Kankkunen country, isn't it? And it genuinely is Kankkunen country. When this piece of road was first on the itinerary for what was then the Thousand Lakes Rally in 1962, it was known as Kankkunen.
Wow.
It was that stage.
Wow.
That
It was called
that was the name of the
Kankkunen
stage.
I didn't
because
know that.
this was the Kankkunen land. You know, we talk about the likes of Oinapoja and Mehimpa and all of these Mokipera, all of these roads. Sometimes you forget Lankamaa, this road here, has so much history. There's so much has gone on here in the past. The stage has stayed pretty much the same as it always was, but there have been some small changes gone along the way.
So David, in '92, they decided to extend the stage a little bit.
They did, Cole. They added 3 kilometres to the beginning of it, through some narrow, typical narrow finish roads, also through some farmyards, and that's where it's really tricky. We saw Colin McRae in '98 damage the rear wheel on the Impreza. Kankkunen had a couple of moments in these places. This start of the section comes and goes. It doesn't always stay.
We've come into the stage, David. We've come past what was the old start of the stage. We're now into the faster flowing section. And as you can see, this is the recce. And we're about 3 k's into the stage this year. Already in the recce, the drivers have started, David, taking the cut, which is quite obvious. But if you're cutting too much, if you're being a little greedy, going a little too far, there is danger lurking. Didier Oriol, what year was it?
1989, Carl. We don't know if this is the exact stone, but this is typical of what you find on these really fast corners. And 89, a corner very, very similar to this, Didier Oriol committed the Lancia Delta into that corner and caught a rock. The reason that he caught the rock is fascinating, Cole, because back in the day, now we have a 2-day recce, Tuesday, Wednesday, go through the stages twice. Back in, from really when the rally started back in the 60s, all the way through, it was an open recce. You could recce as much as you wanted, and drivers would be here for weeks. Didier Oriol drove this stage quite early, maybe a week or a couple of weeks earlier than everybody else, and he had driven before they'd cut the grass. What he was caught out by was a rock that was buried in the grass. When the boys came a couple of weeks later, the farmer, the local, probably Captain Mr. Kankkunen,
maybe
cut the grass, and the stone was obvious. We spent a lot of time in this area today. We've done Mehimpa, all of those roads. Very, very different nature of stage this. Much less undulation. And we're going into the Eska, a section of the stage known as Eska. That was more kind of almost man-made. It was made probably by the Kankkunens. These are the very roads that Kankkunen grew up on. You know, if the farm is around here somewhere, it was on these roads that he got his first run in a rally car with Timo Mäkinen in a Mini Cooper in the late 60s sometime. There is so much history in this Lankamaa stage.
Well, 31 years ago, David, if you were standing just over here, you were just about to witness one of the most iconic moments, not just maybe in Rally Finland, but maybe in the sport as a whole. It was an incredible moment.
The roll happened there, and the thing just rolled, carried on, fired it up, and just came down this bit of road. Colin McRae in 1992 was on an absolute charge, and the Finns took him to heart. You know, he became part Finnish because he just had this swashbuckling attitude to everything. When you find these places, Cole, it's incredible, isn't it?
It just brings it all back to life, doesn't it? You know, it wasn't just the swashbuckling style of McRae that endeared him to the Finns. This rally was all about his never give up, attitude. It was just incredible. David, we've arrived at the stop line for this year's event, but we've come through some interesting sections, particularly that section where Atco went off, 11 years ago, 2012, I think it was. What happened there? It was a strange one.
I remember at the time asking him, and it was just bizarre. He couldn't really explain what had happened. It was through a sort of medium speed left-hand corner, and he just bailed and went straight into the trees. To me, it wasn't that kind of place that it led your eye along the road. It wasn't a fire break or anything like that. I didn't really understand it at the time. That section is really tricky, isn't it? It's quite... There's a lot of rhythm change in there, some slow corners, and we said on the way through, some huge rocks at the side of the road.
Really big rocks. Now, this was the stop line way back then, David, but
Yep.
there have been other stop lines.
They have. That way.
Onwards, let's go. David, that moment in '92 for McRae, absolutely iconic. But if you're a Finnish rally fan, perhaps that iconic moment was surpassed 2 years later in '94 by the man himself,
100%, yeah.
Juha Kankkunen, on this very spot.
In Kankkunen land, yeah. It came over the crest behind us and got the car quite crossed up on the first of those two crests, out of shape in the ditch a little bit on both sides of the road, and then over this second crest, straight off the road into the ditch and rolled right about here.
We think so, yeah.
And then the car ended the roll just about there. And as you can see, you know, there are some huge rocks in here. We don't know, have the trees grown in the last 29 years or not? We don't know. One thing we do know, these rocks haven't moved. And
No.
it was these rocks that actually did more of the damage to the car. I think it damaged quite significantly the left rear, right, one of the rear wheels. It was the first year that Nicky Grist had done 1,000 Lakes with Kankkunen. And Nick was super keen, kind of, you know, Kankkunen had won this event before, and there was Nicky thinking, this is it, 1,000 Lakes win coming. And this accident happened really early, and talking to Nick, you know, he says that this guy arrived at the window, absolutely yelling at Juha Kankkunen, crikey, he's really shouting at him. And as they get going and get to the end of the stage, Nick was like, I thought that guy was going to kill you. And Juha's like, that was my brother. Because this is Kankkunen land, and you know, they were local to here. Juha's brother would have been so frustrated that this accident had happened in their backyard.
Yeah, what a stage this is. The legend of the Lankamaa stage. So much of the rallying history that's within this stage we all remember. We've all seen it in the videos. A big, big thank you to Antti from It Gets Faster Now website for giving us the inspiration for doing this little piece. Can this year's event add to the legend of Lankamaa?
Of course it can.
There's every chance it will.